Devin Okafor was 38 years old, and until that Tuesday afternoon, he was prepared to save his marriage. He was a civil engineer who had paid every bill on time for 11 years, cleaned his own house, cooked his own meals, and loved a woman who had quietly decided he wasn't enough. When he found the hotel receipt in her jacket pocket, he didn't explode. He didn't confront her. He did what he always did. He gathered information. And then he forgave her. He sat across the dinner table, looked her in the eyes, and told her he forgave her. He meant it. Then he came home early from a job site 3 days later and heard his wife's voice drifting from the kitchen. Low, triumphant. She was on the phone, and she didn't know he was standing in the hallway. What she said next, 4 words, turned 11 years of marriage into something else entirely. And Devin Okafor, the man she had written off as too steady to ever surprise her, went very still, because he finally understood exactly what kind of woman he had married. Before we jump into the story, comment where in the world you are watching from and subscribe, because tomorrow's story is one you need to hear. The blueprints on Devin's desk were covered in small, careful pencil marks. Red for load stress, blue for drainage slope, black for anything that needed a second look. It was 11:14 p.m. The house was quiet in that particular way a house gets when the sounds inside it have belonged to only one person all evening. Devin sat in the glow of his desk lamp, reading glasses pushed down his nose, a cold mug of coffee at his elbow that he kept forgetting about. He reached for it without looking, took a sip, made no face, set it back down. The kitchen smelled faintly of the jollof rice he'd cooked at 6, and covered with foil in case Camille came home hungry. She hadn't come home until 8:30. She'd eaten half a portion, scrolled her phone with her free hand, and said it was good in the tone people use when they are not thinking about what they're saying. He hadn't minded. Or he had minded and had decided not to. The distinction had blurred so gradually over the years that he could no longer find the line. Devin's desk was the cleanest surface in the office. He kept it that way on principle. You couldn't trust measurements made on a cluttered surface. You might miss something, read an edge wrong, misplace a decimal. His crew at the firm called him D.O., and they called him that with genuine respect, which mattered more to him than the title on his office door. Senior Engineer. He had earned it the way he earned everything, incrementally, without complaint, with hands that knew the difference between a structure that would hold and one that merely looked like it would. He wore the same brand of steel-toed work boots he'd bought since he was 26. He drove a truck that was 8 years old and fully paid off. His savings account, personal, separate from the joint, held a number he hadn't told Camille, because she had stopped asking about his finances years ago. Not out of trust, out of disinterest. Somewhere along the way, the ceiling she believed he had started to matter more to her than the floor he kept solid beneath them both. He knew this. He had known it for a while now, in the quiet, accepting way a man knows a pipe is aging. Not ignoring it, just not yet sure where the leak would show up. The party last month. That was the most recent one. Camille's colleague Marcus had mentioned the bridge renovation project Devin was managing. A genuine piece of work, a redesign that would handle twice the load of the original structure. Before Devin could say more than 3 sentences about it, Camille had cut in with a laugh. A small, bright, dismissive sound. Don't get him started on drainage systems, Marcus. I mean it. We'll be here until Sunday. Light laughter around them. She had squeezed Devin's arm. The squeeze was meant to read as affection. It did not. He had smiled and let the conversation move on. He was good at that, allowing things to move on. It had once been a virtue. He was no longer entirely sure what it was. The laundry had been his doing, as usual. He gathered it on Friday nights, when the hamper in their bedroom reached a certain threshold he found unreasonable to cross. Camille's dry clean items he set aside. Everything else went into the machine in loads sorted by color. Her jacket, the charcoal wrap she wore to professional events, had been folded over the back of the bedroom chair for almost 2 weeks. He picked it up. He checked the pockets. Force of habit. He'd found her lipstick this way, her parking stubs, a grocery list once, in handwriting so small it looked like a different person's. What he found this time was a receipt. He unfolded it carefully under the hallway light. Greystone Suites. The address was a hotel 20 minutes outside the city. The kind of place with a lobby that felt expensive without trying too hard. The date printed at the top was March 8th, a Saturday. He remembered March 8th without having to think about it. Camille had left before 9 in the morning with a weekender bag and the specific cheerfulness of someone with plans they were looking forward to. She'd told him it was a company retreat, a spa day with her team. She'd said, "I'll probably not have great reception," in the easy way of someone delivering a fact rather than an excuse. He had told her to have a good time. The receipt was itemized. One night, room 412, breakfast for 2. He read it twice. He turned it over. The back was blank. He folded it the same way he had found it. Neat, along the original crease lines. He walked to his office and opened the top right desk drawer and placed it inside, beneath his spare calculator and the rubber-banded roll of mechanical pencil leads. He closed the drawer. He stood there with his hand still resting on it. A man does not act on incomplete information. His father had said that. It was one of the few things the man had said that had aged into something true. He went back to his blueprints. He lasted 12 minutes before he stopped seeing them. He took off his reading glasses. He set them down. He loved her. That was the terrible, simple, still-present fact of the matter. After 11 years, and the dinner parties, and the disinterest and the long silences that had replaced the long conversations, he loved her. He sat with that for a long time in the quiet of a house he had kept. He was at his desk by 6:15. Camille was still asleep. He could hear nothing from the bedroom, which meant she was deep under. She slept heavy when she'd had wine, and she'd had 2 glasses the night before while he sat across from her and talked about nothing in particular. He opened his laptop, pulled up their wireless carrier account. They had been on a shared plan for 9 years, both lines, one login. She had never once looked at the records herself, and he had only checked them before to dispute a billing error back in 2019. The site was slow to load. He waited. When it did, he clicked into the detailed call history for her line and set the date range to 8 months. The list was long. He didn't rush. He scrolled with the same attention he gave to spec sheets, looking for anomalies, patterns, anything that repeated in a way that didn't fit the expected load. It took him 14 minutes to find it. A number. Georgia area code. It appeared so many times that his eyes caught it before his brain did, the way a structural flaw catches the eye of someone trained to see them. He counted the first month alone. 11 calls, most of them placed between 10 in the morning and 2 in the afternoon on weekdays, several on Saturday mornings, one on a Sunday, lasting 43 minutes, 8 months of it. He opened a second browser tab, typed the number into a reverse lookup site. It took a moment. Preston Holt, Holt Capital Partners. He knew the name. Of course he did. Camille had mentioned Preston Holt the way you mention a fixture, casually, in passing, as part of the professional landscape. Preston approved the Henderson campaign. Preston's coming to the quarterly dinner. He was the company's primary investor, the man who greenlit budgets and showed up at events in suits that cost more than Devon's truck. Devon stared at the name on the screen for a moment. Then he closed the laptop. He got up, put on his boots, and went to work. His lunch break was at 12:30. He told his site manager he had an errand, got in his truck, and drove 20 minutes outside the city. He knew the route without looking it up. Greystone Suites came into view just past the interstate exit. It was exactly what the receipt had implied, a low-profile property that carried itself with quiet expense. Dark glass facade, landscaped entrance, The kind of place designed for people who needed to be comfortable without being visible. He pulled into the parking lot. He sat there. Engine on. He looked at the entrance, the automatic doors, a man in a gray blazer walking out with a rolling suitcase, a woman at the valet stand checking her phone. He sat for 4 minutes. He did not go inside. There was nothing inside that would tell him more than he already knew, and he did not yet know enough. He put the truck in reverse and drove back to the site. He ate a sandwich at his desk and reviewed pipe tolerance numbers for the rest of the afternoon. He cooked again that evening. Simple. Grilled tilapia, rice, green beans with garlic. Camille arrived at 6:50, dropped her bag by the door, and said the apartment smelled good. He told her to sit down. She pulled out her phone before she was fully in the chair. He brought both plates to the table. He sat. He waited until she set the phone face down, which she did when she sensed something was different. "I've been thinking about us," he said. She looked at him. Not with guilt, not with fear, with the careful attention of someone recalibrating. "I think we should try counseling." He kept his voice even. "Things have felt off between us for a while. I don't want to lose what we have because we didn't try." He watched her face. Right behind the eyes, something moved. Not surprise, exactly. More like relief. And just beneath the relief, something he couldn't yet name. "I forgive you," he added quietly, "for the distance, for whatever's been going on with you. I don't need it all spelled out. I just need us to try." She put her fork down. She cried. Not immediately. There was a moment where she seemed to gather something. And then the tears came. She pushed back from the table and came around to him and held his face in both her hands. And she said, "I love you," with a conviction that would have devastated him 2 days ago. He put his arms around her. He held her close. He could feel her exhale, deep and relieved, against his shoulder. His face, behind her, was unreadable. She believed she had been forgiven. He had made sure of that. He had offered her absolution for a crime he had not named, and she had accepted it without asking which crime he meant. That told him everything. He lay still beside her in the dark for hours that night. She fell asleep within 20 minutes. Her breathing slowed and steadied. Outside, a car passed. The refrigerator hummed. Devon stared at the ceiling. His mind was already moving. The pipe assessment got pushed. A scheduling conflict with the city inspector. Nothing unusual. Nothing Devon had done wrong. His site manager called him at 10:40 and told him the afternoon slot was cancelled, and they'd reschedule for Thursday. Devon said fine, packed his bag, and drove home. He didn't call Camille to say he was coming. He never used to think about that. He lived there. You don't announce yourself in your own home. Her car was in the driveway when he turned onto the block. A white Audi, clean and waxed, sitting in the spot she always took. He pulled in beside it, cut the engine, and reached for his bag in the back seat. Then he heard it, faint, coming through the side window he'd cracked that morning before he left. Her voice. Not the words yet, just the tone. Low, pacing, a rhythm that meant she was deep in a conversation she hadn't planned for anyone to hear. He set his bag back down. He came in through the side door the way he sometimes did when he didn't want to drag sight dust through the front hallway. He turned the handle slowly and stepped inside and set his boots on the mat. The kitchen was 12 feet away. The door between them was open. He heard her clearly. "He forgave me, Preston. He actually forgave me. I told you it would work. I told you if I cried enough, he'd fold." Devon went still. Not the stillness of shock. The stillness of a man who has just heard a sound he already knew was coming. Like the first crack in a structure that was always going to fail. Exactly where the math said it would. "No, I told him nothing. Not about you, not about any of it. He thinks it was some emotional distance thing." "Preston, he doesn't know anything." She was pacing. He could hear her footsteps on the kitchen tile. Short, even, the walk of someone comfortable in her own certainty. A cabinet was open. He could hear her setting something on the counter. The account is already separate. By the time he figures out anything is wrong, we'll be so far ahead of him he won't even know where to start. A pause. She laughed. It was soft, easy. The laugh of a woman who believes the hard part is already behind her. Baby? It worked. Devon stood in the side hallway for 3 full seconds after those words. He did not move. He did not make a sound. He looked at nothing in particular. The coat hooks on the wall, his own jacket hanging from one of them, the light coming in through the narrow window above the mat. Then he stepped back. 1 foot, then the other. Slow, quiet, deliberate. He picked up his boots off the mat and carried them in his hand until he was back outside. He pulled the side door shut behind him without a sound. He walked to his truck. He opened the door, sat down, and placed his boots on the passenger seat. He set both hands on the steering wheel. He did not cry. He did not shake. He sat with both hands steady on the wheel and looked straight through the windshield at the garage door, the one he had repainted 2 summers ago, because the wood was starting to blister at the corners, and he believed, as he always had, in maintaining what you owned before it deteriorated past saving. He had applied that same principle to his marriage. He thought about that now. He thought about the hotel receipt, folded in his desk drawer. He thought about the name Preston Holt loading slowly on a reverse lookup screen at 6 in the morning while Camille slept. He thought about the way her face had moved when he said, "I forgive you," that flicker of relief, and the thing beneath it he couldn't name at the time. He could name it now. It was satisfaction, not because she loved him and was glad to keep him. Because she had run a play, and the play had worked, and she had filed it away as a thing successfully done. He had handed her exactly what she needed, and she had taken it. And she had called Preston Holt to say so. "I told you if I cried enough, he'd fold." He sat with that sentence. He let it sit in him without fighting it. 11 minutes passed. He did not check the time. He found out later when he looked at his call log. He simply sat until something settled. Not calm exactly. Something beneath calm. Something cooler and heavier, and far more durable. He had come home early today because a city inspector canceled a meeting. Camille did not know that. Camille did not know most things about how his days actually ran because she had stopped asking years ago. She had mapped him in her mind and decided the map was complete, and she had been working from it ever since. That was her mistake. He put the truck in reverse. He pulled out of the driveway slowly, without looking back at the house. When he reached the end of the block, he picked up his phone and pressed the contact he trusted above all others. It rang twice. "Aunt Bernice," he said. "I need to come over." Bernice's house sat on a corner lot on Alderman Street. A small brick bungalow with a deep front porch and window boxes she replanted every spring. The porch light was already on when Devon pulled up, even though it wasn't fully dark yet. He hadn't been able to tell her much on the phone, just that he was coming and that it was serious. That was enough for Bernice. It had always been enough. She opened the door before he reached the top step. She looked at his face. She didn't say anything for a moment. She just stepped back and held the door open and let him in. The kitchen smelled like coffee and the faint cedar of the closet that opened off the hallway. She had a pot already made. She set 2 cups on the table without asking and sat down across from him and folded her hands and waited. Devon talked. He didn't editorialize. He didn't reach for emotion. He laid it out the way he would present findings to a client. Sequentially, factually, one point connected to the next. The jacket, the receipt, the date, the hotel, the phone records he pulled up on the shared plan account, the name Preston Holt, and where he knew that name from, the conversation in the car before work, the way he'd told Camille he forgave her, and the way her face moved when he said it. And then, last, what he had heard through the side door that afternoon. Baby. It worked. He said the words plainly. He didn't linger on them. Bernice had not interrupted once. She sat with her coffee cup in both hands and listened to all of it. And when he finished, she was quiet for a few seconds. Not processing. She had been processing as he spoke. She was choosing. She asked one question. What does she think you know? Nothing, Devon said. As far as she's concerned, I forgave her for being emotionally distant. That's the whole story she has. Bernice nodded slowly. She set her cup down. Then that, she said, is the most valuable thing you have right now. Don't spend it. She didn't say she was sorry. She didn't ask him how he was feeling. She understood that what he needed from her at this table was not comfort. He could grieve later. Right now, he needed to think, and she was going to help him do that. She talked about the account first, the separate account Camille had referenced on that call, what it likely meant, and what it could mean legally. Bernice had spent 22 years working family law. She had never held a license, but she had sat across from enough attorneys in enough proceedings to know exactly how the machinery worked. She explained it in plain terms. In their state, money moved out of joint marital accounts during the course of a marriage didn't just disappear, it had to be accounted for. If Camille had been quietly pulling funds into a separate account, there was a legal name for that. There were remedies for it, and there was a paper trail, because there was always a paper trail. You need someone to find that trail, Bernice said. A forensic accountant. Someone who knows what to look for and how to document it, so it means something in a courtroom. You know someone, Devon said. It wasn't a question. Her name is Odette. We worked adjacent cases for years when I was at the firm. She's licensed, she's thorough, and she doesn't talk. Bernice reached for a notepad she kept on the counter behind her. Yellow, spiral-bound, the same kind she'd always used, and wrote a name and a phone number without looking it up. She slid it across the table. Call her Monday. Pay out of pocket. Don't use any account Camille has access to. Devon looked at the number. He folded the paper and put it in his shirt pocket. You knew something was wrong, he said. Before tonight. Bernice met his eyes. It wasn't my place to say so. He nodded. That was the right answer, and he understood it. And he didn't press further. He finished his coffee and stood up. She walked him to the door. She put one hand briefly on his arm. Not a hug, not a speech. Just a hand on his arm for 2 seconds. Then she let him go. He was home by 7:15. He changed out of his work clothes, washed his hands at the bathroom sink, and went to the kitchen. Camille was on the couch with her laptop, still dressed from work, shoes off. She looked up when he came in. You eat yet? He said. I had something small. I wasn't sure when you'd be back. I'll make something. He opened the refrigerator and pulled out what he needed. He cooked the way he always cooked. Deliberate, unhurried. He asked her about her day while the pan heated, and she told him about a client call that ran long and a presentation she was revising. He listened. He made the right sounds in the right places. They ate at the table. He asked a follow-up question about the presentation. She answered it and smiled a little and topped off her wine. When dinner was done, he ran the hot water and started on the dishes. Camille moved to the kitchen table with her phone, scrolling, comfortable, her feet tucked up under her on the chair. He kept his back to her. He worked through the plates one by one, steady and quiet, and let her believe that the man standing at the sink was exactly the man she thought she knew. The law office of Patricia Dunn was on the 4th floor of a building downtown, sandwiched between a title company and an insurance broker. The waiting room had 3 chairs and a window that looked out over the parking garage. Devon arrived 7 minutes early and sat with his hands folded and read nothing. He paid in cash. Personal account. The kind Camille had stopped asking about years ago because his numbers bored her. Patricia Dunn was in her 50s, compact and direct, with reading glasses pushed up into her natural hair, and a legal pad she wrote on in small, tight print. She did not waste his time, and he did not waste hers. He laid out what he had: the phone records, the receipt, the overheard call, the separate account Camille had referenced, and she listened the same way Bernice had, quietly, completely. When he finished, she set her pen down. "If what you're describing about the account holds up under documentation," she said, "you're not just looking at an infidelity case. You're looking at dissipation of marital assets. That changes your position considerably." Meaning what, exactly? Meaning the court doesn't look at your marital estate as a 50-50 split and move on. It looks at what was there, what was moved, when it was moved, and why. Courts don't like it when one spouse quietly empties the joint account while the other spouse is making dinner. She paused. Get that forensic accountant working. The cleaner the documentation, the less room she has to maneuver. Devon wrote down the phrase on the small notepad he'd brought: dissipation of marital assets. He underlined it once. He was back at his desk by 1:15. He started on the financial records that same evening. He already had access. Their joint accounts had always been under both names, both logins. Camille had simply never imagined he would look. Not because she was careless, but because she had spent years watching him not look, watching him trust, watching him hand over the full weight of his own confidence in her, and never check whether it was being honored. That was her mistake, and it was one she couldn't undo now. He pulled 14 months of statements. He exported them to a spreadsheet, sorted by amount and date, and started reading. It took him 2.5 hours. The transfers were clean, small, irregular enough that no single one flagged anything. 200 here, 800 there, a few at 1,200, spaced weeks apart. But when he laid them all in a row, date, amount, destination account number, the shape of it became unmistakable, like stress fractures in a beam, invisible one at a time, catastrophic when you mapped them together. $41,280 moved across 14 months into an account that wasn't his, wasn't joint, and wasn't anything Camille had ever mentioned to him. He looked at the number for a long time. Then he saved the spreadsheet to the encrypted cloud account he'd set up the week before, backed it up to a USB drive he kept in the locked drawer of his desk at work, and closed the laptop. He did not slam it. He did not stand up and put his fist through anything. He sat for a moment in the quiet of the room and let the number mean what it meant. And then he picked up his phone and called his brother. Kwame answered on the second ring. "You good?" "I need to talk to you," Devon said. "Not on the phone. Can you come by the shop tomorrow morning before your first run?" "Yeah. What's going on?" "Tomorrow," Devon said. Kwame showed up at 6:50 with 2 cups of coffee from the place on Route 9 that he liked, and Devon didn't, but drank anyway. They sat in Kwame's van in the parking lot of the distribution warehouse, and Devon told him enough. Not everything. Not the legal specifics, not Odette, not the attorney, but enough. The affair, the call he'd overheard, the money. Kwame went very still. For Kwame, that was the dangerous sign. "Tell me where he lives," he said. "No." "Dev, that helps her," Devon said. "You go near Preston Holt. She gets to be the victim. Her attorney turns it into a story about harassment, and we hand everything to her on a plate. Is that what you want?" Kwame stared through the windshield. His jaw was tight. "Then what do you need from me?" "Your network," Devon said. "You've got drivers running routes through half the commercial corridors in this county. Preston Holt is a real estate investor. His money touches a lot of businesses. I need to know where his name comes up, who works for him, what his professional life looks like from the outside." Kwame turned that over. Devon could see the moment it clicked, when his brother understood that this was a role, a real one, something he could actually do. How long do I have? A few weeks. Don't push too hard. Just listen. Kwame nodded. He drank his coffee. You good? He said again, quieter this time. I will be, Devon said. That night, Devon sat at his desk. The laptop closed in front of him. The files were saved. The backup was secured. He had the attorney's number saved under a contact name that meant nothing to anyone but him. He gave himself 30 days, not because he was slow, not because he was afraid, but because a structure built in haste failed in the places you didn't check. He had learned that in his first year of engineering school, and he had never once forgotten it. 30 days to get everything in position. Then he would move. Odette Mensah's temporary office was on the second floor of a shared workspace building, the kind of place where accountants and consultants rented by the week and left no trace when they were done. The furniture was neutral. The carpet was gray. There was a small potted plant on the windowsill that looked like it was surviving more than thriving. Devon liked it immediately. No personality. No memory. The right place to hear hard news. Odette herself was younger than he expected, maybe early 40s, with close-cropped hair and wire-rimmed glasses, and the manner of someone who had delivered difficult information to enough people that she no longer apologized for it in advance. She shook his hand, offered him water, and got directly to business. The report was printed and bound. 14 pages. She slid it across the table to him and kept her own copy open in front of her. I'll walk you through the main findings, she said. Stop me if you have questions. He nodded. She took him through the methodology first, how she'd cross-referenced the account statements he'd provided with transaction records, dates, and destination routing numbers. She confirmed what he already knew. $41,280 moved across 14 months. Small transfers, irregular spacing, a pattern designed to stay below notice. He had known all of that. He had built that spreadsheet himself. Then she turned to page 7. This is where it gets more significant, Odette said. She tapped the page with one finger. The first transfer occurred here, November 14th. She looked up at him. When you gave me Preston Holt's name as a reference point, I asked you to provide the earliest documented contact between your wife and Mr. Holt that you could confirm. You gave me a date in February. February 9th, Devon said. That's the first time his number appears in the phone records. Right. She tapped the page again. November 14th is 3 months before that. The room was quiet. Devon looked at the date on the page. Then he looked at it again. The financial account was opened, and the first transfer was made, Odette said, her voice even and careful, 3 months before her first documented contact with Mr. Holt. He understood what that meant. He had understood it the moment she said it. But he let it settle anyway, the way you let a structure settle before you test its load. She didn't open the account because of him, Devon said. No, Odette said. She opened it before him. He drove home in the kind of quiet that had nothing to do with silence. The truck's engine was loud. A sports radio segment was bleeding through from the station he'd forgotten to change. None of it reached him. He thought about November, 14 months ago. He had taken Camille to her favorite restaurant for her birthday in November. He had bought her a bracelet she still wore. He remembered standing in the jewelry store, second-guessing himself, then deciding she was worth the extra. He remembered the way she'd looked at it when she opened the box. He thought about last Christmas, the trip they'd taken to visit her mother in Atlanta, the hotel they'd stayed in, the dinners, the one afternoon they'd spent walking through a neighborhood she loved, her arm through his, laughing at something he'd said. He had taken a photograph of her that afternoon because she looked happy. He thought about all the ordinary Sundays, the meals, the small kindnesses he'd extended without thinking because that was what you did for someone you loved. He had been the mark, not the husband, the mark. And for 2 years, while he was making dinner, while he was paying the mortgage, While he was holding her in the dark and believing she was still his wife, she had been working. He pulled into the parking lot of his apartment complex and sat in the truck. He let himself feel it. He had promised himself one night. Just the one. He would not perform strength in the dark in his own car with no one watching. He sat with the full weight of it. What it cost him. What it meant. What kind of grief it was to mourn a marriage that turned out to be a job she was running. It was not a short night. But the morning came, the way mornings did. Gray light through the blinds. Coffee he made while the apartment was still quiet. He showered. He dressed. He sat at his desk. He printed 2 copies of Odette's report. He placed one inside the folder with his attorney's document, tucked behind the phone records and the spreadsheet he'd built from the joint account statements. Clean, ordered, each page where it belonged. The second copy went into a manila envelope. He sealed it and wrote Bernice's address on the front. He uploaded the digital version to the encrypted cloud account, organized it into the folder labeled with a project name that would mean nothing to anyone but him, and verified that the backup was current. Then he put on his jacket, picked up his keys, and went to work. Devin texted Felicia on a Tuesday. "Hey, been a while. You free for coffee this week?" She replied within the hour. "Thursday works. That place on Mercer?" "Perfect," he wrote back. 11 o'clock? See you then. Simple. Easy. The kind of exchange that wouldn't register to anyone reading over a shoulder. Thursday morning, Kwame called, while Devin was still in the parking lot outside the coffee shop. "Got more on Holt," Kwame said. No greeting. He never bothered with greetings when he had something. Talk. His wife's name is Diana. Diana Holt, 41. Sits on the board of some arts foundation downtown. Kwame's voice carried the particular flatness he used when he was being careful. "She doesn't know about your wife, or any of the others, from what my guy could tell. And apparently, the prenup they signed has a cheating clause in it." Devin was quiet for a moment. "How solid is that?" "Public record. Bernice can find it. I'm just telling you what I heard." "All right." Devin looked at the entrance to the coffee shop. "Good work, Kwame. You gonna tell me what you're doing with this?" "I'm going to put pressure on a pressure point." A short pause. "You need me for anything else right now?" "Not today." Kwame made a sound that wasn't quite approval and wasn't quite frustration. Then he hung up. Bernice had already found the prenuptial agreement by the time Devin called her from his truck. She'd pulled it from public court records in under 20 minutes, the way she pulled everything, without ceremony, without drama, like she was checking the weather. "Infidelity clause is real," she said. "If Diana Holt can document an affair, Preston loses a significant portion of jointly held asset. We're talking about a man with quite a lot to protect. Can you draft a letter to his office?" "Already started," she said. The letter went out by certified mail the next day. Bernice's drafting was precise. It identified Devin by name and referenced the Okafor marital estate. It stated that a pending legal matter might require Mr. Preston Holt's cooperation with documentation of certain business and personal dealings. It did not accuse. It did not threaten. It simply arrived, formal and official, and exactly vague enough to make a worried man fill in the blanks himself. Preston Holt filled in every blank. 46 hours after the letter landed, Devin was at his desk reviewing drawings when his phone buzzed with an alert from the call recording app he'd installed on the shared home line. He had done his research. In his state, recording calls on a jointly held account was legal. He'd read the statute twice before he set it up. He put in his earbuds and listened. Preston's voice was clipped and too fast. "He sent a letter to my office, Camille. By name. Legal language. Someone helped him draft this." Camille's response came right away. Unbothered. Almost amused. "Preston, calm down." "I am calm. I'm telling you, he knows more than you think he does." A small sound from Camille. Not quite a laugh, but something close to it. Devin doesn't move like that, okay? I know him. He's not built for this kind of move. Then explain the letter. I can't explain it right now, but I'm telling you, whatever it is, it's not what you're afraid of. He would have come to me first. That's what he does. He talks. A pause. Preston said something Devin couldn't fully make out. Camille's voice was smooth and final. I'll handle it. The call ended. Devin took the earbud out. He set his phone on the desk. He stared at the drawing in front of him, a retaining wall section for a drainage project, and said nothing for a long moment. He's not built for this kind of move. He had heard her say it. He had heard the certainty, and he saved the recording to the encrypted folder and went back to work. Felicia was already at the table when he walked into the coffee shop. She had her hands wrapped around a mug, and she looked up at him with a smile that didn't quite settle. She had always been the steadier of the two sisters, less polished than Camille, more genuine for it. She stood to hug him, and he hugged her back, and they sat down and talked about ordinary things for a while. Her job, her commute, a renovation she was doing in her bathroom. He let it breathe. Then, when the easy part was over, he set his coffee down and looked at her. "Felicia," he said, "I need to ask you something, and I need you to be straight with me." Her hands went still around her mug. "How long did you know something was wrong with my marriage?" The hesitation lasted maybe 4 seconds. 4 seconds was enough. "Devin, I'm not asking to put anything on you," he said. His voice was level. "I just need to know." She looked at the table. Then she looked at him, and something in her seemed to release, the way things release when they've been held too long. "About 8 months," she said quietly. "Before you found out. She told me it was over. She said she was going to fix things. I believed her because I wanted to." He nodded. He didn't rush her. "There's something else," Felicia said. She wasn't looking at him now. She was looking at the space past his shoulder, the way people do when they're making themselves say something they've been carrying. "The night before she told you, when she cried and admitted everything." She stopped, swallowed. "She called me first. That same night." "Why?" Felicia's jaw tightened. She wanted to go over what to say. What would work best? A pause. "She knew you. She knew exactly how you'd respond if she came at it a certain way. She practiced the part where she cried." Her voice dropped lower. "She rehearsed it, Devin. She planned which parts to say and which parts to leave out, and what words would make you most likely to just let it go." The coffee shop was full of quiet noise. 2 women laughing at the counter, someone's phone ringing once and going to voicemail. Devin sat with it for a moment. The confirmation of the thing he had already suspected did not make it smaller. It made it precise. There was a difference. "Thank you," he said. "I mean it." Felicia's eyes were wet. She shook her head like she was disagreeing with something no one had said. "I should have called you. I know I should have." "You didn't know the whole picture," he said. "Not absolution exactly, just fact." He paid for both coffees. He told her she might want to be available next week because things were going to come to a head. He didn't say more than that. He left her sitting with her hands wrapped around a mug that had gone cold, and he walked to his truck in the thin morning light. That evening, he made Camille's favorite meal. Jollof rice, the way she liked it, with the tomatoes cooked down slow and the chicken seasoned the night before. He set the table properly. He opened a bottle of red wine she had been saving for a special occasion and poured 2 glasses without asking. She came into the kitchen and stopped, surprised. "What's all this?" "Nothing," he said. "Just felt like cooking." She smiled. It was a real smile, the relaxed kind she only showed when she thought she was safe. She sat down, and he brought the food to the table, and they ate together the way they used to, before everything. She told him about a client meeting that had gone well. She laughed twice. She reached across the table and touched his hand at one point, briefly, the way affectionate people do. He was warm, he was present, he listened and responded and smiled when she smiled. Across the table, in the candlelight she didn't know he'd lit with intention, he looked at her face. He thought about November 14 months ago, the bracelet, the birthday dinner, the photograph he'd taken in Atlanta of a woman who had already opened an exit account and was already, quietly, working her plan. He thought about Felicia's voice. She rehearsed it, Devon. He thought about Preston's voice, clipped and afraid, and Camille's voice, smooth and certain. He's not built for this kind of move. He made his accounting, full and final, line by line. Then he refilled her wine glass and asked if she wanted to watch something after dinner. She said yes. Tomorrow was the last day of this version of his life. Devon was up before 6. He showered, dressed in clean jeans and a plain gray shirt, and came downstairs while the house was still quiet. He filled the coffee maker and stood at the kitchen window while it ran, watching the backyard in the early light. The grass needed cutting. He had cut it every 2 weeks for 11 years. He made a note, then let the note go. He texted Bernice at 6:14. Come at 9. Side door. He texted Kwame at 6:15. Same. Don't knock loud. Both of them replied within minutes. He knew they would. He poured 2 cups of coffee and set them on the table. He sat down in his usual chair, the one facing the stairs, and waited. Camille came down at 8:47 in her Saturday clothes, soft leggings, an oversized sweatshirt, her hair pulled back. She was holding her phone, and she almost walked past the kitchen before she registered him sitting there. "You're up early," she said. "Sit down, Camille." Something in his tone stopped her. Not the words. The words were ordinary enough, but the tone had no warmth in it, and no anger either. It was level in a way that had no give. She sat. She reached for the coffee cup in front of her. "Tell me about the account," he said. She looked up. "What account?" "The one you opened 14 months ago. The one you've been moving money into." Her face did the thing he had watched her face do before. A careful rearrangement, concern layering over calculation. "Devon, I don't know what you're—" "Take your time. But don't tell me you don't know what I'm talking about." She put the cup down. She looked at him the way she looked at clients when she needed them to trust her. "Is this about the savings account?" "Because that was just— I was putting money aside. For us. In case something happened." $41,000, he said. "In 14 months? In increments small enough to stay under the flag threshold." Her mouth opened slightly. He placed the forensic report on the table between them. She looked at it. He watched the color move out of her face, the way water drains out of a glass, steadily and all at once. "This was prepared by a licensed forensic accountant," he said. "It documents every transfer, every date, every amount. My attorney has had a copy since Tuesday." She was quiet for a moment. Then she reached for something. The tears came, real-looking, the way they always were with her. Her voice went soft. "Devon, I was scared. I know how that looks, but I was scared about the future, and I didn't know how to talk to you about it." "I'm going to keep going," he said. "You can respond when I'm done." He opened the folder in front of him. He laid it out the way he would lay out findings for a city planning board. No heat in it. No theater. The hotel receipt from her jacket pocket. The date. The 2 guest charge. The phone records. Preston Holt's number. Dozens of calls across 8 months, during weekends and work hours, beginning before any of the financial transfers. The forensic timeline. The account opened 3 months before her first documented contact with Preston. The plan that came before the affair. The exit that was being built while she was still coming home to him, eating the food he cooked, sleeping in the bed he made. The certified letter to Preston's office. Her phone call with Preston 46 hours later, the one she didn't know he had recorded. He slid a printed transcript across the table. "He's not built for this kind of move." Her jaw tightened. She pushed the transcript back toward him. "You recorded my phone calls? That's an invasion of—" "Joint account. Shared line," he said. "Legal in this state. I read the statute twice before I set it up." She went still. Then he told her about Felicia. Not dramatically, just the facts of it. The coffee, the question, the answer, the phone call the night before her rehearsed confession, the practiced tears, the specific calculation of which words would make him most likely to fold. Camille looked at him for the first time without anything managed behind her eyes. What was there instead was something he didn't have a name for. Not guilt, not remorse. Something closer to the shock of a person who has just discovered that the ground they were standing on was not what they thought it was. "You've been planning this," she said. "Yes. How long?" "Long enough." She tried one more pivot. Her voice went thin and sharp. "You had people watching me. You went through my finances. You recorded me. "I documented a campaign that was run against me in my own house," he said. "For 2 years." She said nothing. He closed the folder. He looked at her across the table in the kitchen where he had cooked 1,000 meals, in the house he had never missed a payment on. "I could have survived you falling out of love with me," he said. "People fall out of love. That's not what this is." He kept his voice even. "You looked me in the face, and you used my love as a tool. You calculated my forgiveness. You rehearsed it. You turned the best thing I had to give you into a mechanism." He paused. "There is no version of this where you walk away with what you plan to keep." He let that settle. "The divorce petition was filed Thursday," he said. "You'll be served Monday morning." He stood up. Bernice and Kwame were in the living room. He had heard them come in through the side door at 9, quiet as he'd asked. He looked at them now and gave one short nod. The three of them walked out together. Behind them, Camille sat alone at the kitchen table. The forensic report lay open in front of her. The coffee he had poured for her had gone cold. The call came on a Thursday. Devin was at his desk reviewing load calculations for a drainage project when his attorney, Marcus Webb, reached him just after 2 in the afternoon. Marcus was a compact, precise man who didn't waste words on the phone. "They want to negotiate," Marcus said. "I know," Devin said. "Their opening position is a 50-50 split of joint assets, no acknowledgement of the transfers. You know what my position is." "I do," Marcus said. "I'll communicate it." He hung up and went back to his calculations. Marcus's response to Camille's legal team was simple and left no room for interpretation. Full accounting of every transferred dollar. Full return of all dissipated marital assets. No offset, no recharacterization, no negotiation on that point. If Camille's representation preferred to contest it, Marcus was prepared to proceed to litigation, at which point the forensic report, the financial timeline, and the documented pattern of transfers would become part of the public record of the case. Her attorney called back in 4 days. She agreed to full terms. Devin didn't feel triumph when Marcus called to tell him. He felt something quieter than that. A settled weight, like a calculation that had finally balanced. What Camille left with was her car, a silver Audi she'd leased 2 years ago on their joint credit, her premarital savings account, and her clothes. The furniture stayed. The house went to market. The proceeds were split according to the terms, which accounted for 11 years of joint mortgage payments that Devin had largely carried. She also left with something no attorney could negotiate away. Their professional circles were not large. Word moved through them the way water moves through a connected system, steadily, finding every available channel. Devin had not told anyone anything directly. He hadn't needed to. The divorce filing was public record. Marcus had made no effort to seal it. People who knew them, colleagues, neighbors, the couples they'd had to dinner over the years, began to understand the shape of what had happened, even without the full picture. The full picture, as these things go, arrived eventually on its own. Camille's LinkedIn stayed polished. Her Instagram stayed curated. But the rooms she walked into started to feel different. Quieter when she entered. Warmer toward people who weren't her. She was resourceful. She had always been resourceful. She managed it. But managing it took work. Constant, exhausting work. And the thing she had never fully understood, until now, was how much of the life she'd built had rested on a foundation she hadn't constructed herself. The house, the credit, the stability that made people take her seriously as a professional, the sense that she was a woman who had her life in order. Devon had been underneath all of it, quiet and load-bearing, in the way that foundations always are. You don't notice them until they're gone. Then you feel every crack. Preston's unraveling happened separately and faster. When the certified letter arrived at his office, the one Bernice had drafted, careful and deliberate, and designed to make him sweat, Preston had done exactly what a man of his particular kind of fear always does. He'd called a personal attorney, not his firm's counsel, which would have required disclosure. A private consultation, paid out of pocket, meant to stay quiet. It did not stay quiet. The consultation created a paper trail. The paper trail touched an assistant. The assistant mentioned it carefully to someone in their orbit. And Diana Holt, who was not as unaware of her husband's habits as Preston had always assumed, had sources of her own that she had been cultivating for longer than Preston knew. She acted on the infidelity clause within 3 weeks of Devon's confrontation. Preston didn't lose everything. Men like Preston rarely do. They have too many structures in place, too many assets held in too many configurations for a single event to level them entirely. But the clause had teeth, and Diana had a very good attorney, and the settlement cost him in ways that would take years to fully calculate. His position at the real estate company shifted. The social invitations thinned. The version of himself that he had carefully maintained, charming, untouchable, a man whose private life was just that, developed a fracture that did not close. Camille discovered the full scope of Preston's situation through professional channels, the way she discovered most things. By then, the ladder she had built toward him had already been removed from the wall. There was no destination to climb toward. There was only the life she was in, smaller and harder than the one she had planned, requiring more from her every day just to hold its shape. Felicia called twice during those weeks. Devon saw her name on the screen both times. He sat with the phone in his hand and let it ring out. There was nothing hostile. He simply had nothing left to give in that direction right now. And he had learned, at cost, to stop extending himself into spaces that asked more than they returned. He wished her well. In his own quiet way, he meant it, but he didn't answer. 6 weeks after the confrontation, Devon drove to Marcus Webb's office on a Tuesday afternoon. The final documents were stacked neatly on the conference table. Marcus had a pen ready. Devon sat down, read each page the way he read every document, carefully, completely, without skipping, and signed where indicated. He shook Marcus's hand. Marcus told him it had been a privilege to work a case built this clean. Devon thanked him, picked up his copy of the documents, and walked out into the afternoon. The sun was low. The air had the cool edge that came with the changing season. He stood on the sidewalk for a moment, his folder tucked under his arm, and felt the specific, undecorated weight of a thing that was finished. He walked to his truck. He had a site visit in the morning, and a call with Odette in the afternoon about business structure questions she had offered to help him think through. He put the documents on the passenger seat, started the engine, and pulled into traffic. He was not in a rush. The farmers' market ran along a 2-block stretch of Main Street every Saturday from 8 until noon. Devon had started going 3 months after he moved into the apartment, mostly because it was close and the produce was better than the grocery store, and it gave him somewhere to be on a Saturday morning that wasn't his couch. He was standing at a table of heirloom tomatoes, turning one over in his hand when she spoke. "That's Okafor structural on your jacket." He looked up. She was around his age, natural hair pulled back, wearing a light jacket over a worn chambray shirt. She was holding a paper coffee cup in one hand and looking at the small logo embroidered on his chest, the one Bernice had insisted on when they ordered his work gear. "It is," he said. "You did the foundation assessment on the Millbrook Avenue corridor project 2 years ago, before the repaving." He nodded slowly. "That was us. Well, that was me and one subcontractor. We were smaller then. I'm an architect," she said. "I was on the design side of that project. We used your load calculations in the final spec." She extended her hand. "Petra Vasquez. Devin Okafor." She smiled. "I know. It's your jacket." They stood at the edge of the tomato table for 20 minutes, talking about the Millbrook corridor, about the soil compression issues that had complicated the foundation work, about a building she was currently designing that had a load-bearing wall problem she hadn't fully solved yet. He asked questions. She answered them precisely, without hedging, and then turned the questions back on him with the easy confidence of someone who was used to thinking on her feet. She didn't perform expertise. She just had it. When her phone buzzed, and she glanced at it, he saw the slight shift in her expression. Something to attend to. Somewhere to be. "I should go," she said. "But this was genuinely useful. I've been stuck on that wall for a week." "Write it down before the solution disappears," he said. "The ones that come in conversation always feel more solid than they are." She laughed. It was a real laugh, unguarded. Nothing at stake in it. "That's depressingly accurate," she said. She pulled a card from her jacket pocket and handed it to him. "In case you work with architects." He took it. "I do now," he said. She smiled again and walked off into the crowd. He drove home with the card on the passenger seat and caught himself smiling somewhere on the bridge over Miller Creek. It surprised him. Not the smile itself, but how uncomplicated it was. No weight to it. Just a thing that happened. He didn't call for 2 weeks. Not because he was playing a game. Because 2 weeks felt honest. Enough time to be sure he wasn't just reaching for something warm out of habit. When he called, she picked up on the third ring and sounded like she'd been in the middle of something. He said he was calling because he owed her a better answer on the load-bearing wall problem. She laughed and said she'd already solved it. He said, "Dinner then, Friday." She said yes. Before he let her go, he said one more thing. He told her he wasn't in a rush about anything, and he wasn't interested in pretending to be something he wasn't figuring out. He said it plainly, the way he said most things. She was quiet for a beat. Then she said she appreciated that more than he knew. Dinner was at a small Italian place he'd been to once before, quiet enough to talk. It lasted 3 hours without either of them noticing the time go. He watched things, not with suspicion, with attention, the kind he had learned, at real cost, to treat as a skill rather than a flaw. He watched how she spoke to the server, easy and direct, like the man was simply a person doing his job, which he was. He watched how she handled the moment when their table was wrong and they had to move. A small thing, the kind of small thing that shows you something true. She didn't make it into anything. She just picked up her water glass and moved. He watched how she laughed when he said something that wasn't even that funny, fully, without checking herself. He asked more questions than he answered. She noticed. "You're a very good listener," she said near the end of the meal. "I had to learn to be," he said. She didn't push on it. She just nodded, like that was a complete sentence, which it was. His firm had grown steadily. 2 clients had become 5. A county contract was under formal review. Bernice had helped him structure the business entity from the beginning, staying on the phone with him through the paperwork the way she had stayed on the phone with him through everything. Kwame had brought the first client through his logistics network, a warehouse developer who needed an independent structural assessment. And from there, one referral had pulled the next. It was not large, but it was his, every piece of it. One evening, sitting at his drawing table with the day's work done and the apartment quiet, he called Bernice. She asked if he was eating. He told her about Petra, the farmer's market, the dinner, the way he was approaching it. Eyes open, no rushing, paying attention to what was actually there instead of what he hoped was there. Bernice was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "See? You were always the foundation. Now you get to choose what you build on top." He wrote it down. 2 years later, on a Tuesday morning in early October, Devin Okafor stood at the groundbreaking ceremony for the largest county infrastructure contract awarded that year, a project his firm had won through 18 months of careful, documented, competitive work. He was in his work boots. He was holding a blueprint. A photographer from the local business section was in front of him, and Devin was not smiling for the camera. He was smiling because he had glanced back over his shoulder a moment before the shutter clicked, and Petra was there, standing just off to the side, coffee in hand. Not because she needed to be anywhere near a groundbreaking on a Tuesday morning, but because she had wanted to be. She caught him looking and raised her cup slightly. That was all. Camille was in a different city by then. She had rebuilt the way she always did, efficiently, resourcefully, with careful attention to how things appeared. She had a new position, a new apartment, a life that required constant tending, but held its shape. She was at her kitchen table on a Wednesday morning when she saw the article. Business section, local paper from back home, forwarded through an alert she had never turned off. The photograph was small. Devin stood in his work boots, holding a blueprint, squinting slightly into the morning sun. He was smiling, not at the camera, at something just past it. Camille looked at the photograph for a long time. She said nothing. There was nothing to say. He did not know she saw it. He was already at the next site. I hope you enjoyed that one. Be sure to like the video and subscribe so you don't miss the next story. I've picked out 2 more for you that I think you'll really like.